Okay, so here we go. So, okay, what do you think about love between two people? Do you think it's an addiction or is it a beautiful thing? It doesn't. Well, it's how you live your life, right? You can make it beautiful if you want to. You can make it bad. It really depends on your personality. Depends on so many factors. But I think there's always going to be some sort of addiction there. Imagine yourself that if you love somebody, it's like a romantic love, right? And you imagine that person passing away. How do you feel? Are you going to feel okay? It's not going to bother you? Or are you going to feel sad when the person passes away? And that's how you know whether it is perhaps both a beautiful thing and an addiction, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both. It can be beautiful as long as it's there, but it can also be an attachment. It can also be a problem at the same time. These things are not necessarily opposed to each other. They can go hand in hand. So it depends on how you do it. But the point is not so much to judge these things, to say that one is good and one is bad. The point of the spiritual path is to kind of move in a certain way that gives you more sense of happiness, a more profound sense of happiness, a happiness which is less dependent on circumstances, less dependent on your cravings and attachments, a more free kind of happiness. And as you move along the spiritual path, then you will see for yourself whether this is an addiction or an attachment, or it's good or it's bad. And it's really up to you to see these things. The path is there. You just practice it and see what happens, and it will lead you to certain results. And then you follow whatever seems right according to those results. That's really what it's about. If you start judging too much, then it's not about what somebody says. It's really about your own practice and about your own life. So if you are in a relationship and you have a partner in life or whatever, then make it a good relationship, right? Make it something good. Make it something beautiful. Make it a spiritual path that you practice together. Be kind to the person you're with. Make it into something positive. And then you're making the most of that relationship. Okay. Okay, so this says how to comfort a young person whose life is coming to an end soon. Okay, so how to deal with death for a young person. Basically, dealing with death is basically the same for all people. And it depends, if it is a good person, a person who has lived a good life, then you can comfort them by basically, in this life, that good things happen to good people. And the same thing is true also for the future. If there is a future existence somewhere, there's nothing much to be feared if you're going to pass away. You're just going to move on into a nice future. And one of the amazing things about death is that the way most people experience death, they experience it as something very nice, something very beautiful. Because when you die, you're giving up something very heavy, which is the physical body, and it's a kind of a liberation from something which is heavy and difficult. So tell them that you just enjoy what's happening next, enjoy the journey into the future. Don't worry about it. It's usually a beautiful journey here. And often you can read about people who've had these things they call the near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. And usually the way these things are explained, they're explained as a kind of freedom, a sense of being at ease for the first time, freedom from the physical body. And that is usually considered, experienced by most people as something very extremely pleasant. So, for many people, certainly for a good person, death is nothing to be feared. It's actually something to be enjoyed instead. So tell them, wow, think this is actually quite. It might be a very nice journey ahead of you. Find a nice talk by somebody on death. There's lots of good talks on death somewhere. A positive kind of talk about this, and allow them to listen to that. That might be helpful for them if they're ready for that. Read something nice to them. Go to them. One of the things which is always very useful when somebody's dying is go and talk to them and tell them about all the good things in life. Talk about the past. Talk about the good experiences you had with them. Tell them about all the good aspects that they have. Because very often we don't get to hear about our good sides. we think about our negative sides, we try to improve all the time. So go to them and remind them of all the good sides. Remind them of all the things that you appreciate in them, all the good sides they have. And in this way, by that kind of reminding them, they will get into a positive mind state. And that positive mind state will take them into a future in a very positive way. So in this way you can kind of help them and guide them in the right way by just helping them to achieve that positive state of mind. Teach them a bit about meditation practice, if that's what they like. Teach them a bit about just being quiet, just being peaceful, enjoying the peace, right? And in this way, by enjoying the peace, they will detach a little bit from this world. And when they detach a little bit from this world, it makes the transition at death also much easier. There's less to let go of. There's less kind of worries when you pass away. Okay, if you feel that my answer isn't good enough, or you want to ask a second question, or you want to complain about what I say, or whatever, then please, you can always raise your hand, and you can just add another question on top if you like. That's perfectly okay. Okay. When negative emotions and thoughts rise up in your meditation, is it beneficial to note them and give them short names, e.g. greed, jealousy, ruminating? Can it help me to see that negative states also change, or does it take too much willpower? Thank you. I'm not sure if it really helps so that much to give them names. I mean, they are there. You know what they are anyway. You don't really need to say anything. You know what's happening inside of you. I think the most important thing is just to observe and see what's going on and get a kind of perspective on these things, get a distance. And this is what mindfulness is about. Mindfulness is about having a sense of clarity about what's going on. You get a perspective. It's like your thinking is over here and you're standing there, and you get a perspective on your thinking mind. And once you have a perspective, it's almost like there is very little power in that thought. The reason the thought has power is because you have brought it into being through your willpower, through perceiving in a certain way. And by withdrawing and standing back, it's like you are withdrawing the willpower in that, you're withdrawing the power from that thought. And if you can stand back, the thought will tend to end by itself because you're not actually feeding it anymore. Any thought, any emotional state needs to be fed to keep going. If you don't feed it, if you stand back, it will die out and just disappear by itself. So instead of, you can, I know that people sometimes like this kind of idea of naming things and noting things, but sometimes it becomes a habit. It's very hard to get rid of later on. You get in this habit and you note everything, and if somebody says, "Oh, now it's time to stop noting," you can't stop noting because it's become a habit, right? So you keep on noting everything. And then it becomes a hindrance. It can become a hindrance in your meditation, right? It becomes something which stops you from being peaceful. So I think it's better just to learn the ordinary kind of mindfulness where you stand back and you have awareness and you have a sense of distance and not a sense of feeding that particular thought. And this is actually very powerful. And sometimes what you have to do instead is you see something is about, if you have enough mindfulness, you can see that a defilement is about to arise, right? You can see that you're inclining in a certain way. It's almost as if you can feel that next thought is going to be negative. And if you can see that, then you can actually counteract that right there and right then. And remember something positive instead. Bring up a sense of metta, bring up a sense of compassion, bring up something which you know counters that negative state. And this is a skill to use at any time really, but certainly also in your meditation practice. So this is how I would deal with these things. And certainly, it is certainly very helpful to know that these states change. Ideally, you want to catch the state even before it has a chance to get a hold of your mind. There's a very nice sutta, by the way, which I didn't read out, which is called the Vitakka Santana Sutta, which means the calming of thoughts. And this is the sutta number 20 in the Majjhima Nikaya, and it gives you 5 ways of overcoming bad thoughts when they arise. And the first way is just substitution. So when you see that something, a bad thought is about to arise, straight away you change your mind in a different direction and you substitute. And what that means, to be able to do that, you have to have developed perceptions in the past which are positive. So that you can just draw, it's like you draw on a reservoir of positive perceptions, and you can bring that up straight away. And you bring that up, and it substitutes for the bad thought. So you have to, this is what the metta meditation is about, is learning to develop the positive thinking, learning to develop the forgiveness, whereby you can let go of the negative thoughts. Learning, if it is a negative thought about a person, sometimes certain people obsess our minds, right? You can't let go of a certain person. So you learn to develop the positive side in that person, to see the positive side. When the negative thought is about to arise, just before it arises, you quickly remind yourself of the positive qualities in that person. And by doing that, you shift your entire perception, and your thinking pattern shifts, right? And this is life. Sometimes there are certain people we tend to have negative feelings towards, right? So you learn the other side of that person. People are usually some of the most difficult part of life, unfortunately. So this is good to actually work with people a little bit, and work with those people you have a hard time with. And it's amazing how that substitution works. But it only works if you are ready for it when it arises. You have to develop these things beforehand. The substitution is the first one. The second one is to remember the dangers in that negative thought. And this is like the sutta I was just talking about before. Remember that it leads to pain, right? It leads to suffering for yourself and others. It leads to the cessation of wisdom, right? Scary stuff. And it leads to problems for yourself. It's an unpleasant feeling. And just that, if you have developed those thoughts enough, the idea that actually this is painful and is problematic, if you have developed that beforehand, then you can use this during the meditation, and straight away it will go, because you're aware of what's happening. That's the second way. The third way described there is to just stop thinking about it, as I think it says. You just don't think about it anymore. So if you can see your mind going in a certain direction, you just stop thinking about that. I guess you go back to the breath or something, or something like that. And the fourth way is the way whereby you allow the thought just to die down by itself, to become weaker and weaker. And this idea is just what I was talking about before, this idea of mindfulness, whereby you withdraw from the thought, you start observing it. And when you observe it with dispassion, without being involved, the thought will die away all by itself. You can actually observe it dying away. So this is the fourth way. And the fifth way, this is literally what it says, is clenching your teeth, pressing your tongue against the roof of your mouth, and beating down mind with mind. That's literally what it says. But please remember here that when there are 5 things, and again, this is about the structure of the sutta. The suttas are always structured, right? So the first way is the most important one. It's the most powerful one. It's the one you should try to use if you can. So substitution is the best way. Second best way is the one about remembering the dangers in this thing, right? And then the third one, forgetting the thought. The fourth one, allowing it to die down. And when you tried all that and it still doesn't work, then maybe, perhaps, you should use the one where you really kind of use force. But basically, force, you have to be very careful with that, because often it comes from the wrong place, it comes from aversion, and you make things worse, and you end up, screwing yourself up rather than actually achieving anything beneficial. And this can be the problem. Okay, so that's what I would suggest. That's my understanding of the sutta. The Buddha never uses the idea of noting. The idea of noting is a kind of modern invention. In certain vipassana techniques, they use the idea of noting, but it's never actually mentioned in the sutta. So it doesn't mean it's wrong. For some people it might work, but anyway. Okay. Dear Ajahn, thank you for coming to Finland. Okay. And giving a wonderful teachings. Thank you to everyone who has organized the retreat with metta and gratitude. That's a very nice little note. So thanks to everyone for helping out. And I have to say, it's a very nice place, isn't it? It's a really beautiful location, actually. Very suitable for meditation. This hall is very nice and peaceful, has a very good feel to it. The atmosphere is very nice. So I join in the appreciation there. Okay, What books and sources do you recommend to read to find the suttas? Okay, so one of the books that I recommend people who are new to the suttas and new to this teaching is a book which is called what's it called again now? What's it called? Do you know, Richard? In the Buddha's words, I think it's called in the Buddha's words.
What the Buddha taught?
No. This is a translation. This is a compilation by Bhikkhu Bodhi. It's called In the Buddha's Words. And if you're interested in the suttas, it's a very nice introduction to the suttas, because he has kind of grouped the suttas into themes thematically. There's a number of chapters, and they have one on wisdom, one on meditation, one on virtue, different things. He has a nice introduction that explains each one, and nice footnotes at the end to explain what is going on there. And it's very good. It's a little bit. I have to admit, the English can sometimes be a little bit difficult, because Bhikkhu Bodhi he's a philosopher by trade, and philosophers tend to kind of use slightly highfalutin language, unfortunately. But I think generally, for most people, it's not that difficult, and it's a very, very nice way of getting introduced to the suttas. So that is a nice book to get hold of. Another nice source these days, there is a website called Sutta Central, and Sutta Central is a collection of all the early suttas, in all different languages. I'm not sure if Finnish is there yet, but I think it's probably coming soon. If there are any suttas in Finnish, it will be coming soon. Was translation? Somebody's translating it.
I've been contacted to find, or passed on a contact to try and find somebody that could help translate it into Finnish.
Right, exactly. So that would be cool.
So hopefully sometime in the next few years, maybe. There'll be some Finnish suttas.
Exactly. It's great to have the suttas in your own language, because there's something about if you want to understand something, it has to kind of go into your heart to some extent. And if it is your own language, it's much closer to you. It actually, it actually resonates with you in a different way. I know that even though I've been living in English-speaking countries for a long time, even when I read a sutta in Norwegian, it's kind of a little bit more powerful, I think, than when I read it in English. And we are very fortunate in Norway, because we have a man who is very interested in translating the suttas. So we have almost the whole Tipitaka, or large parts of the Sutta Pitaka, is actually translated into Norwegian already, directly from the Pali sources. So those are the two things I would recommend. Is the book called In the Buddha's Words, by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, an American monk. And the other one is a website called Sutta Central, which has a lot of the suttas on it. That's, in my opinion, very good, all very good stuff. And sometimes it can also be nice to listen to an explanation of the suttas by somebody who knows a bit about the suttas. One of the things that I found when I started out as a monastic, I tried to read the suttas, and I found it a little bit difficult to really understand them fully, because it's a slightly different type of language. It's a bit technical sometimes. And I was very fortunate, because in those days, Ajahn Brahm, the abbot of our monastery, he would do sutta readings, and in that way he would kind of guide you into how to understand the suttas, how they all connect together, what the different terminology actually means, and all this, and use Pali terms and all these kind of things. Sometimes it can be good to get a guide. You can download these things on the internet. People like Bhikkhu Bodhi teaches you the suttas. There is lots from where I'm from as well, the Buddhist side of Western Australia. We do lots of sutta readings down there, and you can listen to those guides. I'm sure many of the things that I've been teaching over this last 2 days, if you had read those suttas yourself, it would have been very hard for you to get all of that out of those suttas, right? But when I tell you, it's sort of, you can sort of see it's there, because it's not kind of cryptic. It's just that it's you have to kind of go a little bit deeper than the surface level. So this is the advantage of having somebody to teach you these things, that they actually, it helps you to go deeper. And then eventually one day comes when you start to be able to read the suttas for yourself, and you start to understand what's there. And then you can start to argue with me, right? Next time I come, you can say, "What? You can't say that. that's rubbish, or whatever. And that's good, it's a good sign, right? It means that you are thinking for yourself, and you're seeing things in there which maybe I haven't seen, right? I haven't seen everything which is in there. There's so much stuff in the suttas, so much profundity to them. There's always another level, always a different angle of looking at these things. So it's great to have a little bit of different viewpoints and different angles. Okay, anyway, I'm very glad you asked that question, because it means that I've kind of got you a little bit on the hook, right? That's always a good sign. Okay. As you told on the morning, there are people with negative minds. Is it better to avoid those and possible negative impact, or try to influence those minds? It's always dangerous, this idea of trying to change other people, trying to influence other people. It's this idea that we can help others, and very often we tend to overestimate our ability to help other people. It's actually very hard to help other people. First of all, they really have to want to be helped in the first place, right? It's quite easy with you guys, because presumably you want to be helped. That's why you're here. So I can say all kind of crazy things and you will still listen to me. But generally speaking, if somebody comes to you and they say, "Can you help me?" then they're open, and then you can do something. But if people, if you just want to help them because you think it's a good idea, the chances that they will be open to what you have to say is very, very small, and it's incredibly hard. So the best thing to do very often is just to be a good person, be nice, be kind to them. Don't be around them too much. If you feel that their negativity has an impact on you and it drags you down, then get a bit of distance. Don't kind of put yourself in a position when you get dragged down, because if you get dragged down, it means you don't have your energy anymore to help other people, or even help yourself. So you have to look after yourself. This is one of the important understandings in Buddhism, is that it's not just about looking after others, you have to look after yourself as well. It's a wonderful thing, right? You also a victim of conditioning. You're also a victim of all the problems in the world. We're all, in a sense, victims in that way. So you have to look after yourself, and this is why you bring yourself into your metta meditation and say, "May I too be well and happy." Right? It's a nice thing to say to yourself. May I be happy. It's kind of caring for yourself, looking after yourself. This is very, very important. If you look after yourself, you can look after others. If you look after others, you can look after yourself. It kind of goes together. So, I don't know. Are you happy with that? Yeah? Okay. These things are very difficult. And sometimes it's about feeling, right? Sometimes it's about time and place. Sometimes you feel, now I can do something. But it's almost like an intuition. And then you do something right there and then. Sometimes you feel incredibly positive, lots of good energy. And then you can say things that otherwise you cannot say. And then you can help perhaps a little bit. But it's very important that the other person feels that you're coming from a good place, that you're there to help them, and not just to be a missionary or whatever. Okay. So, how can you change a situation where you don't feel understood and are not allowed to explain yourself? How do you stay around people who misunderstand you and want allowed to clarification? Is walking away or leaving the best solution? Because this caused a lot of suffering in my life. Are these my attachments and those people to those people, or the desire to belong and be loved? Is that a defilement? To wish to be understood and loved. In the end, it is maybe not a defilement, but it is a slight attachment, right? The fact that you feel that you want to be understood by other people. I think we all have that to some extent, but sometimes it's very nice not to be able to give I'm not going to say any bad words there. Basically you don't care whether other people like you or not. It doesn't matter. Who cares what other people say, right? In the end, there's always going to be people in the world who don't like you, there's always going to be like that. There's always going to go down the street and somebody says something rude to you. It's just life, right? It's impossible that everybody in the world should like you. It just doesn't work that way. So might as well just get used to the fact straight away that some people are not going to like you. And that's okay. It doesn't matter. It's not because something is wrong with you. It's not even because something is wrong with them. It's just that the interaction between human beings, sometimes it is like that, that we don't understand each other or whatever it is. And for that reason, there is perhaps a lack of liking, And so that is, once you see it that way, it's not such a big problem anymore if somebody doesn't understand you or somebody doesn't like you or whatever, or doesn't love you. It doesn't actually matter that much. Just let it go. Instead of worrying about that, worry about your integrity. Worry about who you are as a person. If you have enough integrity, if you have enough morality and kindness in you, then usually the other people will tend to come around and come to accept you because of that. They will see that you have a good heart, you're a good person. You don't actually have to explain yourself. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is just wait and be kind. And after a while, they will change their mind, right? And of course, I think one of the great teachings in this is not so much about yourself and your relationship to others, but it's about how you react to other people. So if you feel that you are misunderstood by others, they don't love you or whatever, then that teaches you something about how you should be to other people, because other people will also have that problem, right? So then what you learn from that is you learn how to understand others. If you see your own suffering, and you know other people have the same suffering, then you can actually avoid putting that suffering onto other people. So you understand them, you listen to them, you show them kindness instead, so that at least they can avoid that kind of suffering in the future, while at the same time understanding that such suffering basically is impossible to avoid at times. So focus on what you do, focus on who you are as a person, focus on your own integrity. That's what really matters. There are many things that we cannot do anything about in life. We cannot do things about how people speak to us. We often can't do things when the body gets sick. We can't do things about the pain in the body. And those things we can't do anything about. We have to accept, right? And once you accept it, the problem goes away. And this is such a powerful thing. Once you accept that every day people are going to say things to you that you don't like, right? Don't get angry with other people. It's just the way things are. If you get angry with somebody, you make them stop, then somebody else will tell you the next day. You can't get angry with the whole world, right? So because you can't get angry with the whole world, you realize this is the nature of life, that often, every day, you will hear things that you don't like. And once you come to accept that, when you feel that somebody says something bad to you, you feel the suffering, and then you have compassion for yourself, and you have compassion for the other person, because you know that life has to be this way. And the same thing, if you don't feel understood, there will always be enemies in life, always be people who don't like you. So what you do is you have a sense of compassion for yourself, and you have compassion for the other person, because you know that life has to be this way. When you feel a pain in the body, it's the same kind of thing. And there are so many things in life we can't control. And if you can't control, you have to accept. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. You don't get angry anymore. You don't get upset anymore. Instead, you understand that this is part and parcel of what it means to develop wisdom. Okay, next one. Okay, why the mind is blind when there is desire? Thank you. If the answer is that desire is everything mind can see, why is it that the mind works in this way? Well, the point here, this is what I was talking about before, right? When you have desire, it is like there is a distortion in the mind. What you are doing is that you are interested, you become interested in yourself, basically. You want to gratify that desire, gratify that craving, and it becomes an obsession with yourself and the gratification of the desire and the craving. And because you become focused on yourself, it's like you have a vested interest in the outcome of what's going on. You want to have this desire gratified. And that is the problem. Once you have a vested interest and you see it from your point of view, and you can't see it from a neutral point of view anymore. It becomes about you rather than about understanding things as they actually are. And this is also the problem with attachment, right? If you have a child, and the child is going to school, you want the child to behave properly. If the child behaves badly in the presence of others, you feel embarrassed because it's your child. You're attached to this child, and you feel embarrassed about it. And you say to the child, "Naughty child, don't act like that. This is not the right way." And this is because we have a vested interest in how the child behaves. Once you're attached, there's a vested interest there. When there's a vested interest, it's impossible to be neutral. Because that's the very meaning, the definition of vested interest. You can't be neutral. You can't see the benefit, the overall benefit anymore. But by reducing your attachment to your child, or your partner, or your parents, or your friends, or whatever it is, by withdrawing a little bit, by getting a bit of distance, you can start to see people. You can start to understand what actually is in their best interest, rather than what is in your best interest. Having a vested interest is being selfish, basically. It is about you. Attachment is about you. Once the attachment gets less, it's no longer so much about you, but it's more about the other person. And you can start to give much more sound advice to that person. And that's why, in a relationship situation, why it's often good to get a counselor. If you are in a very difficult situation, you can't see what's happening, it's good to get a third party, because a third party doesn't have the attachment. They can see more clearly what's going on. They can help you to resolve the situation. So the mind with desire is the blind mind. It's the egotistical mind. It's a selfish mind. It focuses on me and my wants. It's not able to see things clearly for that reason. But keep it simple. Just remember how desires make you do things that you don't do when you don't have desire. That's really enough. Compare yourself to when you have desire to when you don't have desire, and see and understand the difference. And then you will understand how you are distorted by desire. Okay. So, during walking meditation, I don't get concentrated as well as sitting meditation. Should I? If not, what should I do during walking meditation? Thank you. Okay, so it depends, right? I mean, there is no right thing to do in meditation. It all depends on what you need at any particular time. And this is one of the things the Buddha says in the sutras. For example, if you have certain defilements, if you feel excited, or you feel agitated or restless or whatever, then you should do a meditation which calms you down, right? If you feel dull, or you feel whatever it is, then you should do a meditation which kind of lifts you up a little bit because you're dull. If you have a lot of anger and desire, and the first thing you should do is try to overcome the anger and desire. So it really depends on where your meditation is going. So if you're sitting and your meditation is going well, and you feel that there is a certain amount of concentration there, or let's not use concentration, let's use stillness, because concentration often gives you the wrong idea about these things. If you feel a certain sense of stillness, and you just want the change of posture, then go outside and continue with that kind of meditation. Continue watching your feet, or watching the breath even as you walk. Whatever it is, you can do that. But often, after sitting for a while, you almost like you can feel. You sit until the meditation comes to an end, almost naturally, right? And because the meditation has come to an end quite naturally, you would like to do something else when you go walking meditation. So do something different. Do a bit of contemplation. Think about the sutras that you have been reading or hearing about. Do a contemplation about impermanence or suffering or something like that. I like to think about death sometimes. I think about death is very powerful as far as I'm concerned. Or just go out and just enjoy the place, right? Enjoy the forest, just go for a little walk around the area, whatever it is. Enjoy the trees, enjoy the birds, have a look around. And just feel relaxed and feel at ease, and just have a good time. Don't do anything in particular. It's all about what do I need. That's what it's all about. It's learning about yourself, understanding what actually is required to feel at ease, to feel relaxed. This is the most important thing. And then at the same time, slightly guiding your mind, just very carefully, using wisdom in the right direction. That makes sense? Yeah? It's all of these things are about personal experience, right? You have to a large amount of this is about you doing these things and actually coming to understand how these things work, and then it becomes very powerful. one of the dangers about it's one of the nice things about being a teacher is that when you teach, you actually come to understand these things much more deeply yourself. And I know that just by listening, it often doesn't go in that deeply. So you have to reflect a lot. You have to read the sutras for yourself and think about these things. That's when it starts to really sink into you. Just hearing it is not really enough. And also there's always different ways, right? I might say one thing which works for me, but each one of us is slightly different. We have a different background, different conditioning, and because of that, what works for us is going to be slightly different from somebody else. I might like to do the death contemplation, but other people get scared. We talk about death and they get really frightened. They feel, whoa, I can't think about death. That's very frightening. And some people, they really freak out when you mention death. They get very, very frightened because of that. And that could be, again, something in the past that has kind of conditioned them in that way. So you don't do that, you do something else instead. Okay, so how should Buddhism be introduced to children? One way, we're just talking about that today with somebody. Buddhism, meditation is being introduced now into schools in many places. In Australia, they have meditation in schools. It's getting quite common, and that's quite a nice way, perhaps, of introducing, perhaps not Buddhism, but certainly introducing aspects that are part of Buddhism by introducing meditation. And so often children get very good results by having a few minutes of meditation, maybe once a week or once a day or whatever. That is a great way of doing it. And there's so much research now which shows the benefit of meditation that it's not that hard, I think, to persuade the authorities that actually this is a good thing to include in the curriculum for schools. So this is a nice way of doing it, but the best way, as with everything, is just to introduce it by being kind, right? If you are a parent, if you are a teacher, whatever, you show through your conduct that you care, that you are kind to the children. You're not one of these parents who's just purely a disciplinarian, but you actually really care for the children. And that, I think, is the most important thing. And then, when the age comes for a child to decide what they want to do with their life, whether they want to be a Buddhist, or they want to be an atheist, or they want to be a Muslim, or whatever it is, and when the time comes to decide, they will have an inclination towards perhaps being a Buddhist, because they have seen really good role models around them, right? So this, I think, is the most important thing. And then they will think back and they will think, wow, that person who was so kind and so caring was actually a Buddhist. Maybe I should check out the Buddhist teachings. Maybe there's something to this particular teaching. This is the most powerful thing. I found that this works so powerfully, certainly in my life. It's very, very useful. And it actually brings people around when you do these things. And then of course there is a chance when you have religious studies in schools, there's a chance there to explain these things in a deeper way. But we should be careful with labeling children as having a particular religion, because choosing a religion and choosing an outlook in life is something that you need to do when you have reached a certain age. We shouldn't force these things onto children. We shouldn't say of a small child, this is a Muslim child, or this is a Catholic child, or this is an atheist child. It doesn't make any sense, right? A child doesn't have anything yet. They have to decide for themselves. That's what happens when you get into your teens. You start to think about life and all these kind of things. Anyway, that's just some random thoughts for you. So we'll move on to the next one. How do I know the right direction or action if my mind is actively trying to trick me? That's a very good question, isn't it? And I make decisions to do something. It looks and sounds really good, but later on I discover it was just my hormones of fear doing the thinking. Thank you. Yes, and this is precisely the problem. The problem is, and this is one of the big problems in life, is that we start out as, we all have a certain amount of delusion, right? A certain amount of ignorance, of lack of understanding. And because we have a lack of understanding, we are blind. We start out blind, and then we try to kind of find the awakening, of opening of our eyes. How can you, when you're blind already, how can you find the way to actually understand things? And this is a major problem. And of course, what that means is that a lot of people will never get anywhere. A lot of people will always be just suffering in life, not actually get access to any good teachings, because they are too blind to actually see what is right and what is wrong, and what works and what doesn't work. So what we do is that we just start off. You just start off in a certain area, and you start by reflecting on life. You start with thinking about what is good and what is bad. This is one of the most basic things. And if you understand a simple thing like kindness is good and being bad is no good, just understanding that is already a certain amount of understanding, right? You already have some understanding by understanding something very simple like that. And then you act on that. And then you're not perfect, but it's okay not to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. You make mistakes. Yes, sometimes it is your fears and your hormones or whatever that drive you. It's fine. So sometimes you make a mistake and then you learn. And then you kind of put yourself back on the right path again later on. And gradually, your mind gets more clarity. And this is one of the beautiful things that happens on this path. You see that the defilements start to decrease. You become a more caring person, a more kind person. You have less anger in your life. You have less desires. All of these things start to go down. And what happens is you get more clarity, right? The mind clears up. You start to see things that you didn't see before. And this is one of the great kind of things on this path when that happens. You start to feel, wow, now I understand. I didn't understand before. This happens to me all the time. I've been a monk now for 20 years, and how many times I've realized that all these habits I've had for my whole life, this is just crazy. Why do I keep doing this? But now, for the first time, I have perspective on something I never saw before. And then I can change, right? And this will happen to you as well. If you keep on this path, you will start to see things that you've never seen before. And you can start to change that. And you change your whole character, your whole person as a consequence. So it's a gradual moving out of delusion, a gradual moving away of ignorance. And the very fact that you know this, that you say this already, is already a very good sign. There is a verse somewhere, or a saying by the Buddha somewhere, that the person who understands their own ignorance, who understands their own delusion, or at least understands that they are deluded, they are wise at least to that extent, right? It's much better to understand that you are deluded, that you don't see things clearly, than not even be aware that you are deluded, to think that you are wise, when in fact you're not. So you already have, the seed is already there for you to achieve wisdom, because you know that delusion is there. So you're already on the right track. So you're already doing really well. So don't be too worried if your fears or whatever take you for a ride every now and again. That's okay. Just go with the flow and see what happens, and learn from it as you go along. Okay. I've got 1 minute to ask the last 4 questions. So we'll see what happens. Okay. It's good to think positive and good things. Can you guide your mind to that? How to treat bad things that comes from the news or the outside? Do you ignore that or what? Yes, you can certainly guide your mind to think the positive things. And that is what I was talking about this morning, right? Today, about how you learn how to focus on the good in other people in particular. And how you learn to forgive by understanding the bad qualities, understanding that people don't really want to be bad. It's just the way they have been conditioned. And by doing that, you can guide your mind to become much more positive. How you look at the world, how you look at, all kinds of things in life. You can guide your mind in a different way. And one of the most important things is to hang out with good people, right? So it's great that you have a group like the Nirodha group. It's a wonderful thing, because it means you have like-minded people who want to be kind, want to make a difference, want to keep the precepts or whatever it is. It's a wonderful and important thing to do. One of the great teachings in the suttas is where Venerable Ananda is the attendant of the Buddha, one of his main disciples, and Venerable Ananda says to the Buddha, "Oh, Master, I have understood the good friendship is 50%, is half of the holy life, half of living the spiritual life." And the Buddha says, no, it's not half of the holy life. The Buddha says, it's everything. Good friendship is everything. It's 100% of the holy life, right? And it's an amazing thing. When I first read that, I thought, just a way of speaking. It doesn't really mean that. But the more you think about it, the more you actually realize it is literally true. It is 100% of the holy life. And the reason is because we are conditioned, because we are so made up by our environment. Our environment is everything what we are. But essentially we are a sum of all the conditioning from the past. Because that is what we are. Who we choose as friends is everything. That is what actually decides how we get conditioned in the future, how we change, whether we have success on the spiritual path or not, whether we go down practicing the Eightfold Path or what we do. So it actually is 100%. So because it is 100%, make sure that you choose your friends very carefully. Make sure that these days it's easier. You can have internet friends, you can listen to talks all over the world, you have the Niroda group, you have whatever. But be careful. Because your friends, the people you hang out with, they are going to influence you. There's no such thing as being an island to yourself. You become a bit more of an island once the meditation becomes deeper. But nobody is really an island to themselves. We're all connected, right? We're all influenced by each other. We're all conditioned by each other. So it does matter enormously. And this is one of the things that I find the most important by being a monk. By being a monk, you are with like-minded people. Other people who are kind. You have a teacher, perhaps, who is hopefully wise. And all of that drives you in the right direction. All of that helps you to see yourself and see your own problems and develop because of that. This is one of the great things about monastic life. There's a lot of things to be said for monastic life, but this, I think, is one of the most important things about being a monastic. Sometimes people don't understand what monastic life is all about. But it is, the reason why we have monastic life in Buddhism is because it is like the highway to awakening, right? It is the fastest way. And this is one of the reasons why it is very fast, because of that Kalyanamitta you have. Anyway, I'm probably getting very sidetracked here from the question. So how to treat the bad things that come from the news? Don't listen too much to the news, right? That's just it's just the same story every day anyway. It gets pretty boring after a while. War here, war there, people doing bad things. It's actually quite nice when sometimes I read the news in the newspaper down in Australia, but I always find it slightly depressing to read the news. And I come back to when I stay with my parents, I listen to the news sometimes because they listen to the news. I try to tell them that maybe there's no point in listening to the news, but they don't want to hear that. They want to listen to the news or whatever. But really, I just think a lot of news listening is a waste of time. Sometimes I like to read about maybe kind of social issues which are being brought up, that are being talked about. When I was in Norway now, there was an issue about the idea of euthanasia, about being, somebody being able to commit suicide towards the end of life, or getting assisted suicide, these kind of things. That I think is interesting, because it is an important moral issue as well. And these things I find interesting. I'm quite happy to read about those things. But the kind of usual news that you hear, I'm not sure how important it is. But again, you can deal with that. You can deal with that as well by understanding people, understanding the suffering in the world, and understand that people don't really want to do these things, right? People want to be good, but often they can't change. All these things I've been talking about today. Okay, 2 more. Dear Ajahn, please, could you give instructions on how to deal with pride, including spiritual pride? Grateful yours. Pasi, I'm not sure who Pasi is, but anyway, there's one of you here probably. How to deal with spiritual pride. One of the reasons why we get proud is because we think that things are inherent in us. We think that this is me, right? You get proud because you go to school, you get good grades, you think, I am better than all these other stupid people around me, right? This is what we feel. Or we do well in sports, and we think, these slackers, they don't know how to train properly or practice properly or whatever. And we get proud because we think that there is an inherent quality in us which is better than the other people. So one of the ways of thinking about this, or you think you're in a high social position, or you are wealthy, or whatever it is, and you get pride because you compare yourself. One of the best ways of getting rid of pride is to remember that these qualities are not inherent. They're not you. You're not like that. These things change, right? To say in this life that you are very smart, you're maybe very smart in this life, you have done really well at school, but maybe in your next life you'll be a complete dummy, right? You'll be completely hopeless. So who are you? Are you the dummy or are you the smart guy? Which one are you? And you're none of those, or you're both of those, or you are everything at the same time. But if you take pride in being the smart guy in this life, then in your next life you're going to feel terrible, because you're going to start judging yourself in exactly the same way you judge other people in this life. So once you start to see that these things are not inherent to us, they're not actually who we are, that they are changing all the time, today you might be rich, tomorrow you might lose all your money for some reason, the stock market crashes or whatever, and suddenly you're poor. If you take too much pride in being wealthy, then you're going to suffer a lot when you're poor tomorrow. So remember the changeability. It's not about you. You are not this person. You are just this changing flux of things. And today you have spiritual pride. Perhaps you feel your meditation is going really well, right? Yeah, I'm better at meditating than you. And then tomorrow the meditation collapses, right? And then you feel really bad about yourself as a consequence. So remember that. The conceit comes from the sense of self, that there is an inherent quality in you. This is what the Buddha talks about, the three types of conceit: the superiority conceit, the equality conceit, and the inferiority conceit. They're all conceits because they're all based on the idea of inherent qualities. When there's no inherent quality, you can't judge anymore, you can't compare. Right? Another person is another person. You can't really do these things anymore. That's a beautiful way of getting rid of pride. So remember that. It's too easy to it's very easy to fall into that trap. And don't judge yourself too hard either if you get proud, right? It's okay. Every now and again you get pride. That's fine. It's okay. If you judge yourself, then that's bad too. So just be wise about it. Okay, so the last question for today, perhaps. Dear Ajahn, I worry a lot about other people's happiness, people close to me and people not so close. It makes me feel like I should give more, and even though I try my best, it feels like it's never enough, since there is always someone who needs something. How to work with this in the best possible way. Okay, so this is it's very nice that you care for other people's happiness. It's a wonderful thing, and I know that some of you here you work as teachers, for example, and it's a great job to be a teacher, because it is a chance of giving of yourself and giving to other people, which is a wonderful thing. So it's always nice to do that, but remember, and this is what I was saying before, remember to look after yourself, right? You too are a being. You too need to be looked after. You too need to be cared for. And if you work, and if you try to give too much, you get this thing they call compassion fatigue. And compassion fatigue means you have nothing more left inside. You feel dried out. There's no more goodness inside of you. You feel like you have given everything, and there's nothing more that you have to give. So then pull back a little bit and look after yourself, right? And make sure that you have the energy, and give when you have the energy. Give when it feels good to give. Don't become a compulsive giver either. Give because it feels right, because it's a good thing to do, and then also look after yourself at the same time. Find a balance in life, and then you will do really well. Come on a meditation retreat every now and again, right? And just hang out. Don't come to the meditation retreat and then think that now too I'm going to be perfect. This is a wonderful opportunity to just relax, right? You come to the meditation retreat, you just, like I like to do when I meditate, I just like to kind of hang out against the wall like this. It's nice sometimes. And you just wait, and you sit there and you wait against the wall, and you wait till you just feel good, and then after a while you start to really relax, and then the body kind of straightens itself up by itself. And this is one of the tricks of meditation, never to push yourself, always just to relax, always to have a good time. And sitting against the wall is actually a great way to meditate, at least in the beginning. Don't try to be too straight. Some of the greatest meditators I know, people who get incredibly good samadhi, they start off like this, by leaning against the wall and just relaxing. Because they know how important it is to relax first of all, before you start to meditate. And then, when they start to become peaceful, you kind of just but get up a little bit, and then it works. So look after yourself. Come to the retreats and I really mean that, have a good time, enjoy yourself, make sure you're happy, right? What's the point of Buddhism or meditation if it doesn't make you happy, it doesn't make you feel good about yourself? This is the whole purpose, to make sure about that.